Yeah, we are live now. We can start. We have the ability to start. Yeah. Thank you, Member Northey. Ron Paradise, City of Deltona Plan and Development Services. For the record, in case you all don't know, our fearless leader, Mike Potowski, has resigned his service from the Planning and Zoning Board. He will be greatly missed, and we certainly appreciate his years of service to the city. It's been great service, but you know, he's moving on to bigger and better things. Also, our other elected officers are not present tonight. However, this meeting needs to continue on. Therefore, I'm going to recommend that there be a motion and a vote by the Planning and Zoning Board to appoint our member Patricia Northey to the chair position just for tonight, and then Ms. Susan Burke, our member Susan Burke, will act as the vice chair tonight, and they will go ahead and conduct the meeting. I would appreciate if somebody could make a motion to that effect, and then you all take a vote.
Motion, okay. Ruben, that's you, correct? And who is seconding that motion? Is there a second to the motion? I can't hear you.
Dr. Pfeffer, second. Yes,
Dr. Pepper?
No, Dr.
Pfeffer.
That's Pepper. This is going to be fun tonight, guys.
Yeah, it's okay. Dr. Pfeffer.
We have a motion and a second, and Ron, do you want to call the question on that since you're kind of leading us right now?
Yes. May we have a vote, please? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Ms. Northey, you're in the driver's seat. Thank you very much. And the show must go on.
Okay, so first of all, I'm happy to see all these smiling faces tonight. As I understand it, the first item of business, well, let's do a roll call. I'm sorry, I need to do roll call.
Member Burke? Here. Member Kennedy?
Present.
Member Munoz?
Present.
Member Northey?
Present.
Member Pfeffer?
Here. Present.
Vice Chair Starozic is asked to be excused. Alternate Jordan has asked to be excused, as well as alternate Trombetta. Alternate Rodriguez? Is it member Rodriguez, right? And alternate Webster.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. The order of business under roll call was election of officers, and obviously we're going to...
We're going to defer that till the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. And so do we need a motion to continue that, Ron? Or?
Yes, I would appreciate that.
Okay. Wait, Ruben, who was going to second that motion?
I'll second.
Second, Kennedy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The election of officers has been continued. Approval of minutes and agenda. Minutes of February 17th, 2021. They were attached to your agenda item. I had the opportunity. I reviewed them. They looked correct to me, and I would ask for a motion to approve those, or if there's corrections, let's entertain corrections. Somebody want to approve the, I'm sorry, did you move that?
I don't know where the copy, because I read the agenda long ago, so I didn't know there was an update or something like that.
Okay.
I don't think there's something wrong, you guys, okay.
No, I read them, they looked accurate to me.
Okay, so I'll go with it.
Okay, so
Motion to approve.
approval by Ruben, and who is our, Mr. Kennedy, did you say? No, okay, all right, so there's any corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, motion carries for the approval of the minutes of February 17th, 2021. We will move into a presentation, general overview of the city's land development process. Ron, who's going to handle that one?
Yeah, I would like to introduce, and you all have seen Ms. Noshla before. We're going to give another educational discussion about the riveting topic of parking here within the city and the regulations that are intended to manage parking. Without further ado, Ms. Merced.
Thank you. Can you speak up a little?
There we go. Now it's
There we
working,
go.
right?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Noshla Merced, and I'm a planner with Planning and Development Services, for the record. And tonight, I'm going to provide a general overview of what staff looks for when reviewing parking for new developments. So first things first, why are parking regulations important? These regulations facilitate safety and organization for those traveling. Imagine pulling into a parking lot that does not have any directional arrows, stop signs, striping for crosswalks, or parking stalls, and so on. How safe is this? Not safe at all, right? Properly planned parking areas will provide for safe and orderly travel of the community at large. Now let's talk about the provisions in the city's land development code, which aid the design of these parking facilities. Section 110.828, off-street parking and loading regulations. This section sets the regulations for developers to provide an adequate number of off-street parking and loading spaces for the users of occupants, employees, visitors, customers, patrons, and suppliers. Section 110.829, off-street circulation, parking dimensions, loading facilities. These are requirements. This section provides general design requirements for internal circulation to assure the movement between public right-of-way and parking stalls are conducted in an efficient and orderly form. Keep in mind, off-street parking requirements and regulations will depend on the use of the development. For example, parking requirements and regulations will be different for a single-family dwelling compared to an apartment complex, which generate more traffic and require more parking facilities. What does staff review? Staff will look for compatibility with the sections previously mentioned. They will see what materials the parking is made of. If required, they will request mass transit parking that meets the city's requirements. As for access, staff wants to see how vehicles and pedestrians will access the property safely through the city's right-of-way. They also review the illumination of parking areas. Staff verifies that there is adequate lighting and that it does not disturb the adjoining properties. Staff also looks at impervious areas and stormwater runoff. They want to make sure that the water is going to the right place and not flooding local roads, parking areas, and structures. Last is the design factor, which is very important. This includes the review of required setbacks, driveway widths, landscape requirements for the interior parking area. Solid waste containers are required to be enclosed and landscaped. Loading areas and queuing areas. Minimum number of off-street parking spaces and bicycle parking. And dimensional requirements for regular parking stalls, handicap stalls, and parking islands. These reviewing factors help create a safe and functional parking area for the community. And at this time, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? I have a couple. vehicles have gotten bigger over the years. My husband drives a Ford 150, and it's huge. And has the size of parking spaces increased based on the fact that vehicles, well, some of them gotten smaller, some have gotten bigger?
Well, these parking dimensions are they do account for those
Okay,
sizes.
so that's not changed in the last, okay. The other one is number of handicapped. I believe that that's based on square footage of the...
So depending on the square footage or use, we calculate how many parking spaces, and depending on how many parking spaces you have to reserve a certain amount.
Okay, and has that number, as the population has aged, has that number increased any, do you know?
That I don't know of.
Okay.
Now, I have seen, though, in some developments that I've worked on, they do tend to provide additional ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we have, as a city, maximum size parking lot or a minimum size parking lot of impervious surface?
So there is for impervious surface as a whole on the property. For commercial, it'll be 70%. For residential use is 60%
Okay.
of the
Okay.
property.
All righty, thank
Okay.
you. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate it. Okay, okay, we will, presentation is completed, and we will move on to, there is no old business, a public forum, excuse me, guys. Is there anybody from the public that wants to address the P&Z board? Okay, looks like we have none of that, okay. There is no old business on the agenda, so we'll move to new business, and ordinance number 022021, amending the official zoning map to rezone plus 128.24 acres of land generally located on the east side of Normandy Boulevard and south of Graves Avenue from the City of Deltona Industrial to Industrial Plan Unit Development, IPUD, and Mr. Paradise, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ron Paradise, Plan Development Services. For the record, this is a rezoning. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. I'm going to turn that over to Attorney Seagal George to swear everybody in that will be giving testimony, and then you all will be asked to divulge any ex parte communication you all may have had with regard to this rezoning request.
Okay. Everyone who's going to give testimony, presentation in this matter, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. For the board, the chair will need to, this is quasi-judicial, and that means we have certain requirements we have to observe in this type of a hearing. And so the chair will need to ask any of you if you've had any ex parte communications. We've gotten much stricter on this with the commission, so I would ask the same of all of you. If you have, even if you've driven by the site, that counts as an ex parte communication. If you have spoken to the applicant or spoken to others, if you will try and give us as much specificity as you can for the record. And the chair will ask everyone, and then the chair will also answer. We've sworn in the folks. The only other issue is when you get to the point where you're formulating a motion or in your decision making, I would ask that each of you, as before you would vote, that you would state why you are voting the way you're voting, particularly either based on what is recommended in the staff report, or if you don't like that recommendation, is this both?
Yeah, they're all alternatives proposed.
Yes,
ma'am.
so we've started doing that in the staff reports, where there are alternatives for a yes or a no. So they're in your packet. So as each of you vote, when you get to that point, I would ask that each of you express why you're voting the way you are. Because we're hitting the big time now, and we have a couple of lawsuits, and so, you know, the better record I have, the better I have to defend, you know, for the city. So other than that, then that's really all. And if you have, if you have any questions along the way or process, because I know this is a little weird with how everybody's taking on roles they haven't had before, you can, at any point in the hearing, just ask the chair if you have a question that you want to ask me or a concern or whatever, and we'll just at that point address it. So
Okay.
we'll be a little loose with those kinds of things, but we're going to try and be strict with the elements of quasi-judicial hearings.
Well, having worked with Mr. Paradise in other forum, I'm confident that he will help guide us with your assistance, and we will get through this just fine. I'm looking forward to the presentations, and we'll first look at quasi-judicial ex parte, and we'll start down at this end? No? Okay.
I drove by the site. I did some Google searches. One of the things I found was this from Lehigh, Pennsylvania on high-cube
Okay.
warehouses, so I made sure that everyone got it. Because, you know, this is an unusual building for the town, and I tried to expertise myself.
Okay, and I'm guessing we need to enter this into the record. Would that be correct? Okay. Okay. Mr. Kennedy?
No ex parte.
Okay.
I have driven by the site previously prior to the matter coming before the board. I also did some Google research and happened to come upon the same article that was provided. That's part of the record as well.
Great. Sir?
I have had no communications with anyone in regards to this matter at hand today.
Okay, and as chair, I've driven by the site several times because it's on the way to University High School where I pick up my granddaughter. So I've checked it out. And I actually called in, there was a sign that was down, and I called that into staff as a zoning sign. So, okay, does that take care of what?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And now we're back to you, Mr.
Thank you,
Paradise.
Madam Chair. Ron Paradise, Plan Development Services for the record. Ordinance 02-2021 is a request to rezone 129 acres from industrial to industrial plan unit development. This project is known and otherwise referred to as the Portland Industrial Park. The property is located along North Normandy Boulevard, south of the movie theater, and right across North Normandy from the new Amazon facility. The property is located within an area of the city known as the Activity Center. And the Activity Center has been earmarked for decades, first by the county and then carried on by the city for an area of intensive development, employment-oriented type of growth, also service type of uses like commercial facilities and whatnot, taking advantage of the strategic location at the interchange of State Road 472 and Interstate 4. Again, this is intended to realize eventually a synergistic pattern of manufacturing, warehouse, commercial, and institutional establishments. The uses proposed for the property are basically industrial and distribution oriented. There is a new format that is recognized as a standalone use known as a high cube format or a high cube warehouse format. And these tend to be, you know, highly automated type of distribution facilities. Sometimes they are high profile and can be quite large. The Lehigh, Pennsylvania study that you all have is just kind of a case study of some of the high cube warehouse uses throughout the United States. The high cube warehouse for the purpose of this will be a much lower profile type of use and can be smaller in size, down to about 250,000 square feet. There are other entitlements allowed, office uses and flex space type of operations. Finally, there is limited opportunity for ancillary service type commercial, like maybe a fueling station or a restaurant. Those uses are capped at 15,000 square feet total. The level of intensity that the property can be developed is controlled by a trip cap. And I'll discuss this trip cap in just a few minutes. However, at build-out, the property is anticipated to support northward of 2 million square feet of gross floor area. It's a pretty substantial development program here for the city. As with a project of this magnitude, traffic needs to be effectively managed. I don't think you'll get any argument from anybody on that. With regard to the trip cap, the trip cap is limited, or the project at build-out cannot generate any more than 5,407 trips. Of those 5,407 trips, there's anticipation that 848 will consist of heavy trucks, freight hauled by 18-wheelers. Just for some perspective, 5,400 trips is a 500 or 600 unit subdivision. Single-family dwelling units, there won't be obviously a lot of truck traffic associated with that, but that's just kind of some perspective. Traffic management, especially heavy truck traffic, is a major component of the Portland Industrial Park Plan Unit Development Agreement. Part of y'all's package, there's a lot of information in there about how to manage traffic and how to manage truck traffic. There will be several methods used to manage traffic, including the trip cap, but also access management techniques. Right-of-way dedications will be requested. Shift changes will be required. And finally, off-site mitigation, or otherwise known as proportionate fair share improvements to upgrade roadways that will be partially impacted by this facility. We're going to start with right-of-way dedications. The intent is to create a network of paralleling facilities or roadways to relieve Graves Avenue, to relieve Elkham Avenue, and ultimately to provide some level of relief to Saxon Boulevard, you know, all those east-west corridors there. Therefore, the city is requesting the main east-west roadway, I call it the east-west spine road, in the project be dedicated to the city as a 60-foot right-of-way with 10-foot easements on each side to facilitate ultimately an 80-foot wide envelope to accommodate travel ways, pedestrian, and utilities. There's anticipation that this roadway will extend to the east and link to a new road. And that new road is what we have been calling the Rhode Island Avenue extension. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Along the southern margin of the property, the city is requesting a 70-foot right-of-way dedication. Again, east-west along the southern boundary of the property. And that right-of-way is anticipated along with an existing right-of-way to the south to accommodate the aforementioned Rhode Island Avenue extension. Now let's talk a little bit about this Rhode Island Avenue extension. As you all know, Rhode Island Avenue trisects and terminates with Veterans Memorial Parkway west of the interstate within adjacent Orange City. The county for many years has planned to extend Rhode Island, flying over the interstate and extending and terminating at North Normandy Boulevard. Okay? And the county actually has purchased some of the right-of-way to accommodate that alignment. The goal here is to facilitate a further extension of Rhode Island Road to the east, and eventually it would transition to the north, intersecting with Howland Boulevard, either along the Master Sergeant Tara Jacobs Road.
Ron, do you have a picture of
I
what you're
do
talking
not,
about?
and I apologize for that.
It's very hard to follow.
Yes, I'm sorry. And like I said, it's a conceptual corridor right now.
See mine.
I'll take that hit. Fair. You're being very generous, Member Munoz. Thank you. In any event, or it'll make a connection with Howland on the Wolfpack corridor. Yet to be determined. But we're looking into the future, and we think that this road is needed to better manage traffic in the west side of the city and within that general activity center area. Now, no guarantees expressed or implied. And if this does come to fruition, this will be many, many, many years in the future. But we have kind of initiated a dialogue with FDOT and the TPO to talk about an interchange at Rhode Island, at the flyover Rhode Island Road and Interstate 4. Like I said, it's going to be years in the making, but it's a major transportation project. Nothing associated with Portland Industrial Park will be contingent upon that interchange happening or not. This project, the intent is for it to move forward without that interchange.
But you're reserving for the future. That's what
We have initiated
good.
a dialogue looking into the future, because I think
This road should have been done 15 years ago. And that's just the truth of it, so.
Yes. Like I said, it's the wheels at FDOT and the Federal Highway Administration turn real slow, especially dealing with a major project like that. All right, well, enough of that. The project will first be accessed by 3 driveways, okay, extending off North Normandy Boulevard. Eventually, there will be access facilitated to the Rhode Island extension to the south when it's built, okay? The 3 access points I'm referring to will align or plus up with the southern 3 entrances to the Amazon facility. Let's talk about these driveway cuts, how they're going to be designed. They'll all be turn signaled. They'll all have turn lanes. They will be, 2 of them will be fully signalized, okay? And the intersections will be designed with truck deterrents to ensure that the truck traffic goes and comes from the 472 I-4 interchange. The goal here is to ensure that truck traffic is minimized or hopefully eliminated, but I can't guarantee that because people get lost, Sure. It's very hard sometimes to control human behavior, but we don't want trucks going south or coming from the Saxon Boulevard interchange using North Normandy, especially going through those neighborhoods south of Furwood. And that's kind of that is definitely the goal here. Also talked about signage, directional signage at these intersections and at the intersection of Graves and North Normandy. They're going to be required to install Opticon, which is license plate readers, so that if the city deems appropriate, take some sort of enforcement action. We see trucker that is somehow scooching around the deterrent just to make that south hand, you know, nobody's looking type of thing at 3 a.m. or something like that. Boom, we got a picture of it. And then we can, you know, deal with it in some manner or another. I'm not going to sit here and say that there will never, ever, ever, ever in a million years be a truck using that southern segment of North Normandy Boulevard. But the intent is to fully discourage it. Okay? When the development within the project reaches certain thresholds, meaning square footage and PM peak trips, 350 PM peak trips, they will be required, projects of a certain size will be required to initiate shift changes. And the idea of shift changes is the shift change occurs outside of peak travel hours, outside of that AM and PM rush hour. Amazon uses shift changes now, and Amazon's worked out real well. Now, I'm not a traffic engineer, and I'm just kind of going through the, you know, from my anecdotal seat of the pants driving around the city, especially during peak hours. And, you know, the Amazon development really hasn't changed the traffic patterns dramatically and created an enormous amount of congestion that it potentially could, and a lot of that's because of the shift changes. Also, some of it's because, well, you know, they did make improvements to the transportation network as well. I talk about traffic mitigation, sometimes referred to as fair share. Based on fair share calculations, this project will generate a need for $5.84 million in improvements to offset the traffic impact. Most of these impacts and most of this money will go to improving roadways outside of the city. Veterans Memorial Parkway, Kentucky Avenue, examples. And that's going to be handled by the county through separate fair share agreements between individual developers or end users and the county of Volusia. From the perspective of the city, the fair share amount calculated has been $889, $344. And 40 cents. We can't forget about that 40 cents because that's going to make or break us. This allocation is to facilitate the 4-lane in North Normandy between Energy Avenue and South Street near the Furwood intersection. Again, I'd like to remind the Planning and Zoning Board the fair share payment is just that. It's just a fair share. We estimate, quick down and dirty, that 4-lane improvement's probably going to cost about $4 million. So we get about a quarter of it from the Portland Industrial Park development. And it's quite possible that we would get these fair share payments incrementally as end users come online. This isn't unusual. This is common, the growth management throughout the county and the state. But realistically, is the county's going to, the city's going to need to front the money and do the improvement and wait to be reimbursed as development comes online through the future. Let's talk about the existing condition of the property. The property is vacant. It's undeveloped. It's basically forested. Typical Central Florida scrub. kind of a common natural landscape here in the city. The property contains no wetlands, no floodplains. The soils are sandy and well drained and conducive to development. I'd like to close, just make some remarks here before I get into kind of an overview of the alternatives, before the Planning and Zoning Board. Job-oriented development has been a long-standing goal here in the city. In fact, I think it's been a major plank of most campaign platforms that I can remember here in the city. Portland Industrial Park represents a realization and a continuation of city economic development goals for job growth. I'm going to hijack economic and ecotourism sustainability managers saying here that Mr. Mays likes to say, Amazon was the first float in the parade. Portland Industrial are the next floats. There's two alternatives. One is obviously to deny the request, okay? The advantages are the property remain forested and there won't be the traffic generated from the facility, including heavy trucks.
Ron?
Yes, sir.
You say that we have economic growth goals. I mean, what is the goal from this project? How many jobs do we expect?
We do not have a handle on that. We do not have a handle on end users. I mean, if Amazon's, could be used as a yardstick, I think there's 500 to 1,000 employees there within, working multiple shifts. Back to the advantages of denying the request. The city won't have to provide law enforcement or fire services to the project. Disadvantages are many. The jobs, housing imbalance associated with a good number of the working population commuting outside of the city will remain. 40% of the population, or excuse me, about 40,000 of the population, which I guess is 40%, about 100,000 people now, commute to jobs outside the city. We'd like to reverse that jobs housing imbalance. The city will not receive a tax base increase with regard to the investment that could be made in the Portland Industrial Park. The city also, an alternative is to approve the IPUD request, approve Portland Industrial Park. Remember, this property is already zoned industrial. It's been earmarked for intensive type of uses. This type of activity, I've been here practicing planning in this county for over 30 years. And when I worked for Volusia County, I did a lot of work, or a fair amount of work, on this activity center area, even before the city was a city. And the county had looked at this area and planned for it to be a great economic engine here, taking advantage of that Interstate 472 interchange. Zoned, planned.
That was always the vision.
Yes.
It was always the vision
Always
that
the
area
vision.
would develop exactly as you are describing it, Ron.
Right. City's tax base would be increased. The project can be served with public infrastructure, roadways, utilities. The IPUD request, Portland Industrial Park, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. With that being said, city staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend the City Commission adopt Ordinance 02-2021 rezoning for the Portland Industrial Park to IPUD. I'm going to go ahead and right now I got the slide up for questions and answers. And hopefully I can scratch and claw my way up to a C, you know. Close. It just depends, huh?
Let's start down at this end, and Ruben, if you have any questions for Mr. Paradise? Any?
No, I can ask the question to the
Will the applicant be making
The
a
applicant is here and they
presentation?
would like to speak. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so this is specific to Ron's presentation. Is there any questions?
basically the reading of the staff report, and I know how to, not in particular.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, do you? Okay. I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, you are absolutely correct that this is what this vision had been for this area forever. I served on the county council when we adopted the
1993.
yeah, that's a long time ago. And I'm just interested, though, because it's high and dry land and it's right next to Lyonia, well, it's adjacent to Lyonia Preserve, and scrub jay habitat and tortoises. Those will be addressed as part of any development, correct?
That is correct. There's a section in the development agreement that clearly indicates that they need to survey for both jays and gopher tortoises, and that is required part of the city's land development review process.
Okay.
And if there's any jays or tortoises there, they need to be, managed in accordance with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the Florida Fish and Conservation Commission.
Okay, I just wanted that in the record. Okay, do we have the applicant here to make a present? Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a question. What property does that area butt against? Is it a residential area? I know the theater is back there.
Yeah, to the north, it abuts a theater property, which is known as Deltona Village. It's a 130-acre area that has already been zoned and entitled for commercial and potentially some residential, high-density apartment-type uses. To the east, is basically the county's Deltona North wastewater treatment facility. To the south is land that is subdivided as part of an antiquated subdivision known as Pine View Estates. That property is zoned residential. However, that zoning is just a carryover. And on the comprehensive plan, it is included in the activities center, and it is also earmarked for industrial uses as well. So that residential zoning and that lotting pattern's kind of a holding type of situation, waiting for things to change and there to be, aggregations of development, of property to facilitate development.
Okay, so there's no development anticipated at the Pinewood Estates?
No, ma'am. None of the roads were ever put in, no utilities were ever put in, and sometimes these antiquated subdivisions are referred to as paper plats. Just everything's on paper, but nothing's out there in the field.
Okay. Did you have a question, Alan?
Yeah. It's kind of a complicated project or projects in the sense that there's a bunch of PUDs that come across, and one of them will be potentially this high cube warehouse. I'm concerned how the town will control and manage the process. I mean, this high cube warehouse is of a construction that we're not used to. When you look at some of the recommendations, they say it should be a special zoning district with its own rules, whatever those rules are. And I'm concerned that we aren't thinking that way. What will our fire trucks and stuff be able to reach the height of these warehouses have we thought through? I'm not against the development. I just want to make sure that we're on our side in shape to control it. I'm concerned that we're doing this in theory for creating jobs, but we're putting in warehouses that aren't going to create very many jobs. They're going to be almost completely automated. So I want to know what process the town will have to track how many jobs we're actually getting versus whatever planning goals we have, so that we can fulfill our requirements on the thing. I mean, are these high cube warehouses hurricane proof? Because it's a rack construction with sheet metal. It's not concrete. So these are unusual buildings, and I think we ought to be ready to zone them properly, or to within the zoning class we have.
Would that not be addressed as part of the development review?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that
This is just a rezoning piece
yeah,
here.
that is a building code matter as
Right.
far as and I can tell you, and I'm not a construction expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been in the Amazon facility, and it's just basically a metal skeleton with, walls on all sides and bays and doors and stuff like that. It's a very, very utilitarian type of design. And, we have these types of distribution facilities in South Florida. Walmart's got one in Fort Pierce, for example. There's distribution facilities in Miami, and they have to comply with 150-mile-an-hour wind zones.
But that's not here. I mean, when you say it's a building code issue, I'm wanting to make sure that the building code people are ready for this type of development. Not that it's in place today, but that we anticipate that this might be an unusual development.
Ron, could you maybe go over how, once the rezoning is done, what happens at that point? And maybe the developer or whoever the applicant is can address the concerns, because I hear what the board, the P&Z is saying. They want to be sure this is new to Deltona, and are we prepared to protect the city's interest in how this is developed?
Sure. This is kind of the first step, and the development standards that apply, the initial development standards that apply, including a building height limitation of 70 feet, which was identical to what was applied to the Amazon or Project Normandy. What happens when the rezoning gets approved? They'll probably come in and plat the property, create a subdivision, put in roads, put in the utilities, water and sewer, stormwater, et cetera. And then the city will review individually site plans for individual developments on these lots. And the city will look through everything from setback requirements for, compliant with the PUD, to parking requirements. You all just saw a presentation by Planner Merced about parking. That's just one element. Landscaping, need to be landscaped as well to provide for vegetative buffers. After that, after they get a development order from a site plan, through the site plan review process, then they come in and pull a building permit. And that's where the building codes kick in as to hurricane resistance and electrical safety, fire safety.
Fire safety.
Yeah, fire safety is extensive. It's got its own bunch of books.
So I'm wondering, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but at some point, perhaps could board members come in and sit in on one of those meetings that you have, just to be educated about all the questions that are asked and how we are handling that? Is that appropriate or not?
Yes. We have a DRC meeting every first and third Thursday of the month. We're having one tomorrow.
Are those public?
Yes,
like
they are.
Were in the county? Okay.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
The majority of the time lately is just spent really on pre-applications. You know, people want to come in, they want to, you know, have kind of an informal.
An idea of this,
Yeah.
it
What's
can be
entailed and
done. Yeah,
everything,
what can we do? Yeah, I still think it might be a good idea.
I think it'd be educational.
If members are interested in that, if you could please ask if we could get a schedule of that sent out to the members.
Remember, board members need continuing credit, educational credits.
That's right. Give us credit for it, we'll be there.
Yes, we will. We will.
Yes, sir.
I have this nightmare of this church building in Altamont Springs, you know, this high thing next to the I-4.
That is scary.
And
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, that sends chills down my spine.
So do you have, how do I say this? As part of the contract, if you have Amazon and it's a warehouse, somebody else could take over that warehouse. It's a standard construction. This high cube warehouse has specialized racking, and I don't understand whether, say, the developer of the individual plot can't continue it, or they have financial issues. Are we protected for disposal costs in the contract?
Excuse me, can I intervene here?
Yes.
To clarify that point, because we kind of like in the loop there. Regarding the construction of any building, anywhere in the United States, in South America, whatever, there is a regulation, but the regulation is based on engineering design. So that kind of engineering design means like, doesn't matter you do like 100-story building or something like that, you have to follow certain regulations that is based on structural calculation and everything that complains like the quality of the soil, the wind, and a bunch of factors. So the building can be made of paper, can be made of concrete, can be made of metal. Still, you have to withstand all that kind of regulation and everything.
Yeah,
And it's up to the
there are
engineer.
standards.
It's up to the engineer
Yeah.
that signed the paper, that want to lose the license and get the liability that don't do that right design. But also, that's why the building department in every city is entitled to double check that this is by code regulation and everything is okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is the big concern. The big concern here is like maybe it is appropriate or no, something like that, because the design is no, like, for instance, for us, it's a little out of scope, checking on the design, because still they have to do the process to build the department. They're going to be reviews.
I think it's important to note that this is a rezoning request, and that that rezoning has a matrix that goes with it as to what can go into that zone, and that dictates a lot of the building, what kind of building, and what the uses are.
Correct.
So I think, is it okay if we move on to the applicant and hear from the
That's what I said.
applicant?
That wasn't my question, though.
Well, but you're talking about building issues, and this is a rezoning, so I'm not sure what it is that we can answer for you.
I guess when you build something, you have to consider disposal costs. Get rid of it.
Madam Chair.
I don't think that.
If it's a specialized structure.
Madam Chair.
Just a moment. Could I defer to the attorney and ask if that is an issue that we would address for a rezoning? Does that
no.
factor into our discussion?
No, not specifically. And I think that Ron tried to explain the process, that if the rezoning occurs, what will happen as we
Right.
go down the path. And so at the different stages, different issues will come to the forefront that have to be dealt with. And the issues of what the building structure is, if it's unusual or strange or has some particular circumstances involved in it, it will, as Ron said, these buildings exist in other places in Florida.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
member's concern, and I don't want to speak for him, but I believe that does the building, if something happened financially, are we under the gun to Yeah, I mean, everybody is, I know where he's coming from. Everybody's looked at that building on I-4.
Yeah,
And it's
but
like,
that's been there for a long time,
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we don't have, I mean, as this project moves forward, if these warehouses are built or however they exist, we don't have any financial responsibility. Yeah, I mean, nor do we, I mean, the only problem is if they go vacant, you know, the property owner of the property still owes to us on taxes, just like anybody else, you know, so it is, but we don't assume any additional liability because it's maybe more futuristic or more state-of-the-art or unusual.
I'm going to go down to the end here.
Madam Chair, would you be kind enough to ask the members of this board that when they speak speak into the mic, as the acoustics up here are terrible?
I agree with you.
And I have a hard time understanding. Thank you.
They're bad up here. The acoustics really are bad. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Ron,
Thank you.
are you ready?
Good evening. Jason Lewis, Kimley Horn Associates. Also have James Taylor here.
And the name again?
Jason Lewis with Kimley Horn Associates.
Okay.
I'm a civil engineer. I also have James Taylor with me as well, who's our traffic engineer on the project. We're representing the DOT Properties, who's the owner applicant of the property. First off, I want to say thank you. Staff has been great to work with. It's been a long time working on this project and getting to the point where we're at. It's been a really good process, and staff has been great to work with through that process. We're here, obviously, more than happy to answer any questions that you have. We do have one request, though, as we continue to work with the development team. You know, we continue to find minor things on the project that we feel would be good to be able to make minor adjustments, such as we got a road that we're going to be putting in as part of the project, runs east and west. Currently, it's defined that needs to be on that first driveway on our project. We like the flexibility to kind of move that throughout the project, each driveway. So as we work to finalize the project or work through this final process, we like the ability to work with staff on those minor items to be able to make minor adjustments like that.
And Ron, that's acceptable?
Yes, it is. I would appreciate.
Because it's a PUD, correct?
Yeah. I would appreciate it if and when the board makes a motion that they just direct staff and the applicant to work together to further refine this PUD.
Okay.
The only other couple of things I want to hit on real quick is you mentioned and I know this is not building, this is rezoning, but I just want to at least mention as far as the building height, Ron's already mentioned, we're capped at whatever the land development code requires. We're going to stay underneath that, so there shouldn't be any issues there. Construction of these buildings, the typical our high cube warehouse is a concrete tilt wall type construction, so it's a concrete facility. And then the racking interior, it may be specific to a particular user, but those are set up such that if another user comes in, they can be reconfigured and modified, if you will, to allow for a different user. Again, happy to answer any other questions that you may have, and along with James Taylor.
Okay, we'll start down this end this time. Sir, do you have any questions? Okay. Okay. Well, any questions? Okay.
Okay. I have no questions at this time.
Alan? You have a question? Okay, well, we'll come back to you. Ruben, you had any questions?
No, I don't have any particular question at the moment, so
Okay.
let's see what happens now.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you anticipate doing anything special to attract Deltona residents to work in this thing, say like hiring events?
Yes, sir. Right now we don't know who the end user is. The property is being marketed to end users, but typically for those, as you get end users coming in, they're looking for those local residents, and a lot of times they're actually looking at the local labor force, if you will. So I'm sure there'd be opportunities for that to occur.
So maybe a job fair, something like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Also, you're going to have mixed use where you're going to have trucks and you're going to have a diner or whatever. How will the truck pattern work?
The roads the internal roads that we're proposing, we design them once we get a final layout of when you get an end user. If there is something like a diner, and again, there's very minimal uses that potentially could come in like that, we would design the roadway network to allow for the mixture of those vehicles, whether it be your semi trucks and auto traffic. We would design it such that it accommodates that.
When you proposed a certain truck density and assumptions on the traffic, when we're approving something with that understanding, I mean, the project seems to be more ill-defined than the paperwork we've gotten. I assume we're approving this with the cap on the number of trucks that's been assumed for the roadway and things, as opposed to in the middle of it, suddenly there's going to be twice as many trucks because we're going to have 2 high-cube warehouses versus 1.
Ron, you want to address that as far as what the approval process, what that includes?
Yeah, how this is going to work is as these end users come online and develop, they're going to be requested to do trip counts. And basically, we're going to keep an accounting on how many trips each project consumes. And as we get down to, to the end, that will limit intensity based on the number of trips that can happen. And then eventually it'll be the end of development within the project. And if they want to ramp up intensity, they will have to do a major amendment to the industrial plan unit development, and it will have to come back before the Planning and Zoning Board and the City Commission for another review.
Okay.
What are we approving?
We're approving a rezoning, and there are, pardon me?
We're approving a rezoning with a given map along with it, right?
I'm not sure I understand. The rezoning is to an iPUD, correct?
Yeah, and
which gives you flexibility
Yes.
to make changes as needed to address the conditions at the time that
Yes.
building is going to be done. So, for instance, the map that, if I understand it, the map that's in here could reflect a change. I think I heard you, sir, say that something about one of the driveways. So,
Correct, yes.
okay, so that would be negotiated at the PUD during the development process, correct?
That's correct. These master development plans tend to be pretty conceptual in nature. They can be. We've seen high level of detail that basically looks like a plat, and then we've seen bubble concepts also.
What is in this agenda item on page 27 of 27, it says the recommendation from staff is to approve the iPUD rezoning request. The Portland Industrial Park iPUD is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we have to have consistency, and is compatible with existing and planned uses in the area. There will be upgrades to transportation infrastructure, which will benefit the project and expand capacity on city roads. So all of this stuff here is part of an iPUD that is negotiated at the time of when you're working with staff. We're doing the rezoning right now that allows staff to move forward. Well, it goes to the commission. I think that's the next step, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Is the wording, the iPUD is located well away from residential areas, but we have a zoned residential area that's abutting with it.
We do, but that is
just worded properly, that's all.
Okay, I'm looking at on page 27, and Marcia and Ron, if you'll help me out here.
Yeah, basically-
The language that you would
Yes.
like to, for purposes of a motion, is consistency with the comprehensive plan and compatible with the existing land uses. Would
And the
that-
city's economic development goals, and then basically that comprehensive plan, it's compatible, and the upgrades to the transportation infrastructure, which will benefit the project and expand capacity on city roads, and the project will be managed. And I think that's where Dr. Pfeffer is. He's wanting
Yeah.
to know when the managing goes on. And the managing will go on after, if the commission approves the rezone, then as this project moves forward and the applicant has more information about what they're looking for, that's when all of this gets managed. And some of this will probably end up at the DRC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be at
And we
DRC.
can alert anybody who's interested when that happens, to alert all of you if anybody wants to come to the Development
I think
Review
that would be
Committee
appropriate.
and see how it's actually happening, because it's land use is complicated, and it's very difficult for those that have not had and Florida is even more complicated. I came from Colorado, which is like, oh, it looks good, it's fine. So Florida is very different, and it's very complicated with regard to how land use comes down with your comprehensive plan, your land development code, consistency, impact. Florida is very complex. Yeah, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I had to learn it all when I came, because it was like in Colorado we didn't have any of this. But by the same token, that's where kind of right now you're letting them engage in mixing the cake.
Yeah.
And there is a process they're going to go through, and there are certain steps in the process where if you want to go watch the part of the mixing, we can alert the members, and
Yeah,
it's a good
a planned
learning.
unit development is
My
intentionally
issue, and
allows
I
for
guess
some
it isn't-
flexibility.
It isn't in the wording, but it's somehow to make sure that the commission understands that we may have to expand or hire consultants to manage this particular project.
Well, that part I don't, again, until we know more,
Right.
and that doesn't really affect this process. That's something that's going to have to go on with the city manager, assuming it's approved by the commission as this goes on, determining that we need additional experts or whatever. I think that even like for the Amazon project, the staff handled all of it. We didn't really go outside. So I don't know about this new type of, construction or how it goes, but it looks very interesting. But if we need consultants, we'll get them. There is a team that's very committed to trying to deliver.
I'm confident in the staff here that they know what they're doing. Ron is a technical guy, and he'll hold them accountable, I have no doubt.
Yes, he will.
Because I've worked with them before.
So we're trying, Dr. Pfeffer, we're trying to kind of give you the framework that will move forward, that will start providing answers and fill in kind of the box that you're looking to fill in, but we can't do that at this part of the process. And you brought up the residential, but the reason that Ron has said it's compatible is because on the map, it still is even though it says residential, it's a paper plat, and none of the infrastructure was ever put in place. So it is on the map as part of this activity center industrial. So it's not inconsistent.
So let me just ask one question. On the map, it shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels. Is it the
Ron can answer that.
intention, Ron, that those all become one? Or how?
Yeah, everything you see here outlined in the red.
In the red?
Yeah.
Okay.
Eventually, those ROWs that separate, they're going to vacate that.
Okay. So is there anything else that we need to have before us,
No,
Mr.
ma'am.
Paradise?
Yeah,
Before?
now they're going to
Okay.
Okay. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Muniz has a question.
Yeah, because I want you, no one to ask questions and then somebody need to clarify. Okay, this is the question for the engineer. Just to confirm, the site plan that you're presenting here is a proposal. It's not like the final site plan. It's the closer proposal that you had, the way it's supposed to be based on your calculation, but doesn't mean it's the final design, correct?
No, it's not the final design. It's conceptual site plan of what could potentially go there.
It can change during the process because of the request of the planning and zoning, the request of the building department. It can change, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
So that's why it's important. I'm going to ask it and at the same time clarify. It's clear that even if you put houses over there, that's going to increase traffic. In this case, we're talking about trucks, semi-trucks. It is clear that the road had to be designed in a certain way that can afford the movement. And I believe it's crystal clear, as you as a professional designer, that even though the road is not like the best of the best of the best, it's new, that section is new, it may require some improvements in the future. I don't know, I didn't understand that part, but I don't want to go into the detail, but I believe that that's going to be addressed in the case that it's needed, that the improvements need to be done by the developer at the moment because, you know, the road need accommodations. So just to clarify that that's the point. In the moment that this come to a situation that you had to maybe work on improvements on the area to make possible like a soft movement of traffic, one way or another, somebody's going to participate on that development, either the developer or the city by sharing with the developer, correct? Okay. So besides that, I don't think I have future questions, and I believe that if somebody else...
Do you want to make a motion, Ruben?
I'm going to make a motion.
Madam Chair, we need to ask if any...
Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry. We always do the same
I'm
thing.
sorry.
And I totally apologize for that.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? No? You know of anybody? Okay, my God, this is a red letter date.
Okay. So, Albert?
I would like to make a...
Albert, come on. No, I'm kidding you.
Since it...
We don't want to make him speak.
I know.
No, it's a good fight.
Okay, Ruben, I'm going to look to you to make a motion, my friend.
Make a motion to approve,
And would you please...
and I need you to read, please, for me, because I don't like the... I'm an engineer, I know a lawyer, you know. I don't like to read that part.
Define it, yes. Yes.
Ruben Munoz make a motion to approve ordinance
All right.
02-2021.
Yeah, based on substantial and competent evidence, including Portland Industrial Park will create jobs within the city and help address the jobs housing imbalance. Most jobs created will be in distribution and manufacturing, which are higher paying than most service sector jobs. Distribution and manufacturing jobs are more likely to have benefits like health care coverage. Portland Industrial Park, utilizing Amazon as a comparable, would generate approximately $650,000 a year in taxes at present millage rates. The project can be served by public utilities like roads utilizing existing capacity or making fair share payments. Portland Industrial Park is located on land planned for intensive uses and employment-oriented development. Is situated in an area of existing and planned commercial and industrial development and is located well away from residential neighborhoods. The project is consistent with the city economic development goals. Portland Industrial Park IPUD is consistent with the city comprehensive plan, and I'd appreciate it, Madam Chair, if you could direct Mr. Munoz, if he sees fit, to include that, to direct staff and the applicant to work together on further conceptual plans.
Okay, Mr. Muniz, can you add that to that motion?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion? It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we don't take roll calls up here. We just take voice votes.
No, I mean, I think on this one.
You have
we
to take
should
a roll call?
Yeah,
Okay.
and if I could ask each of you, however you vote.
Okay,
if you
that's
will
right.
include some part of what you've heard.
Yeah.
Is there your reason, either because it's consistent, because it's important economically, or
Okay.
whatever you feel you want to add to your vote?
Thank you. Will the clerk will call the roll, please, for the vote?
Member Burke,
In favor, and the reasons are that the Portland Industrial Park is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is compatible with existing and planned land use in the area. There will be an upgrade to transportation infrastructure, which will benefit the project and expand capacity of city roads.
Member Kennedy,
I approve for the reason that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as well for future development in the city of Deltona, as well as more opportunities for the city of Deltona, for the people of Deltona, and just to continue to grow.
Member Northey,
I vote to approve, and I vote to approve because this particular location has been identified for as many years as I've been in Volusia, almost, as important to economic development for the city of Deltona. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan and will bring benefits both economically to the city and will increase the city's tax base.
Member Pfeffer,
I vote to approve because it's consistent with the plan of development.
Member Rodriguez,
I approve it. I vote in favor of it because I think Deltona needs more development, more growth. It needs progress, and this was going to bring progress through the city. It's going to bring jobs. It's going to bring economic opportunities, and I think it's just going to add funds to our coffers that the city needs to address the needs. Thank you.
Okay. So do you announce the
They missed me.
oh, I'm sorry, Ruben. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy.
I'm not gonna cry.
I'm new to this.
No, you're doing very well, believe me.
Member Munoz,
Yeah, I approve because it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and also because it's A-plus project for the city of Deltona, and that's what we're looking for, and it's in the right place. The project is very interesting. So we're looking forward to see something like that coming more often.
motion passed 6-0.
In the affirmative, 5-0. Okay. So that concludes our business. Is there any other staff comments that you wanted to either add, Attorney or Mr. Paradise?
Yeah, just real quick. I'm going to try and work on my GPA.
You're going to what?
Work on my grade point
His
average.
C minus.
Yes.
His C minus. He's trying to improve.
I'll give you a B minus, Ron. I'll give you a B minus.
One thing about Ron, he's always, you get probably more information than you need, but that's better to have more information than you need.
And he's
So,
always positive.
It's always positive.
I just want to thank everybody. We had a difficult circumstance tonight where everybody had to play, roles that were assigned to you as you came in. And hopefully at the next meeting, we can have an election of officers again. And I think that having any of you come to a DRC and seeing how that works too, and as this project moves along, if we can let these members, in on when it's going to be scheduled, and you can come watch it, because sometimes you get a much better understanding of the process by seeing how it works.
Yep.
Than just having Ron or I trying to, between the two of us, we have 70 years of experience, so it's like a lot. And so, but it is not something that we learned overnight. So,
No, it's very complicated.
it is complicated.
It's very
And
complicated.
we want to help all of you, feel comfortable with your roles. So I think that everything went pretty well tonight, and hopefully we're on a roll. So thank you.
With that, are there any other board member comments before we
Yeah.
adjourn?
Mr. Kenny, you got a comment? No?
Okay, then seeing none, I'll
I had
ask for a
comments.
motion to adjourn.
No, I had
I
comments.
move to adjourn.
I had comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay, yeah. Well,
I'm going to put you,
I'm very loud, so, but, no, actually, I just try to bring a comment, hopefully it's positive for all of us, is that, especially with projects that are hard to understand because they're a little different than the standard, like residentials and something like that. And this is a question, it's a legal question, so just to help me out on this. For instance, in certain way, for some of us, maybe these kind of topics could be very familiar, but for some of us, maybe it's not that familiar, so we can have some questions. So my idea, it is possible, like we can address without breaking any rule, have questions directly to staff, like, can you explain this to me, at least the explanation, not like, what is your position or something. Sure. And I wanted to address that because I want to let them know that maybe sometimes we can use those resources.
Yes, and also I'm always, through the folks in the legal office here at the city, while I may not always be there, they are, and they can always get a message to me. And I am a known workaholic. I even respond on weekends. So anyway, if anybody needs or has a question or needs to talk to me, I'm always willing to try. I believe in, what local government can do. That's why I'm an old lady and I'm still doing this. And so you can always get a hold of me, and I'm happy to talk to any of you.
And
Marcia is always open to us.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned that is because sometimes, because of the Florida Sunshine Law, sometimes we think that we cannot call somebody that had an idea or explain a little bit.
I think you can always call Marcia or Ron.
It's so simple. You just, like, for instance, between members, some members have experience on certain things, we can call. The important thing is that we have to be careful about, like, what is your position? Are you going to vote against or something? That's the only thing, legal thing that you cannot illegal.
And stay off the social media with regards to how you think about something before you vote.
Or sometimes emails that are not property, but conversations can be done because sometimes we come to the meeting and we have other questions that are not even for the staff or for the person that's doing the presentation. So we get a little, longer on the meetings, but we knew, and we can improve that way.
I want to thank
So now,
for this, and now you're going to move it to German, correct?
motion to the,
Second.
Okay, and it's seconded by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. Woo, we made it. Thank you.